Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Closed One with AI. My guest today has spent almost 30 years in cybersecurity, solving one problem in different ways, which is making sure that the right people inside large organizations can access the right systems and the wrong people don't. He started as a programmer, he moved into sales, and then he built a company from scratch. The name of the company was SecureAuth. Core idea was combining two things that existed separately back then: two-factor authentication and single sign-on into one product. He did this for 4 years before Okta and Microsoft made it mainstream. The company sold for over $200 million, and that was back in 2014. He holds 15 patents, and today he runs YouAttest, a company that helps large organizations track who has access to what inside their systems, keep it clean, and prove it to regulators. Please help me welcome Garret Grajek. Hello, Garret. I'm glad to have you on the show. How are you?
Great to be here. Doing great. Thanks.
All right. So I have a lot of questions and I want to learn a lot from you. But before we get into work, would you like to give a little bit introduction about who are you outside of office? Just a brief introduction.
No, that was great. That was a good introduction. That's what I've been doing the last 30 years of my life. Been working in identity and working on first the big companies, the RSAs, the Ciscos, the IBMs, which I highly encourage any inventor because it helps you with great ideas and understand what was going on. Before I started my own companies in identity, being SecureAuth, and now YouAttest. And as a human down here in SoCal, Southern California, with a family and in doing the father, wife, husband stuff. So all good.
I also, by the way, have a 1.5-year-old son. That is my entire world. So
There you go.
I found out that how important children are for people. Before that, I didn't know. So being a good father, I know takes a lot.
You mentioned I was in sales. I was really a sales engineer. And I remember a sales manager told me, he goes, because I was new to it, I was a single at the time, and he goes, "Oh God, I only hired the married guys. Those are the ones who are motivated to do this work."
Oh, well, actually, married guys definitely have their motivations, but I've also seen unmarried guys that are motivated because they wanted to become something.
I know, but I'm just commenting on what a sales director would do, and that they're usually, and not to insult any sales managers, they're usually people who run by things that work. They're not like the A students, but they're the A students in life. They know what works. So that's usually what a sales manager is. He's not an intellectual. He's not writing patents, but he knows humans and he knows what motivates humans. So that was I always remember that.
I agree with that. Being able to deal with humans is very important for us. I actually have been sales manager for myself for 6-7
Okay.
years. I worked in big companies. Motive is a company that I worked at for 4 years. I built the department, took it to $2.4 million. I actually had 70 SDRs that I hired,
Wow.
trained, and managed. So that was a massive organization in 4 years. And one of the things I learned while leading that team was that if a manager or a senior manager doesn't know what their team is going through and is unable to connect with them on a human level, that manager is going to fail and their team is not going to perform, no matter how good of a person you are outside of work, or how motivated you are, or how many strategies you have. The team connection is very important at a human level. So yeah, that's true. Uh, so you've been a programmer, salesperson, founder. Most people pick one thing, Garret. What kept
Yeah.
you pulling forward?
It's just a journey. I really do see one's career as a journey. It is not nothing wrong if I would have stayed a programmer the whole time. Certainly nothing wrong if I stayed a sales engineer at a time. But when an opportunity to begin a company that someone else, I had the idea, but they said, let's form a company, which is huge, put it together and whatever. I just jumped at it. That's what it was, and I think it's really binary in the human. Is that comfortable with that? Is that really something that person can feel comfortable with waking up and, leaving a paycheck, leaving the security. And I don't know. I mean, for me, it was a natural progression, but I can see how others would find that to be, I don't know, a little bit disoriented. But that's what I do.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you about YouAttest and AI and cybersecurity and all that good stuff. But I want to ask one more important thing for a certain portion of my audience that is currently still in 9 to 5. And they are making money, but they are still thinking about starting their own venture. From a person with your experience, what do you think should be a deciding point for anyone in their career that now I should quit my job and start my own venture, even if it's uncertain?
I would say this: market validation. Do you have market validation? It's not hard for a bunch of programmers to say, wow, this is needed.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they don't have access to inputs that are from the marketplace. And that could be, wonderful, like we started talking, salespeople. Salespeople are a fantastic revenue for information about what is needed and what is not, because that's their living. Every day they're talking to their customers. And if you gather from your intellectual and from your base and say, okay, I would propose this. You think this would fly? They usually have a pretty quick understanding if it's tangential to what is offered, and going, wow, that's a feature that I wish my company had.
Yeah.
So I would too often, I think founders think if there's something they could reasonably build and have the resources to build. Okay.
How can a person do market validation when they're doing a job? Because
there's two ways. One, you have access to the sales guys. You have access to partners or resellers or channels, or, which I strongly recommend, if you don't, partner someone that does.
Yeah.
Because it will be a key to your success. It will be because that input from the market is what's going to help you get the V1 out the door and get your first customers. And no investor, I mean, yes, it's perfect. Everything's possible. Everything in the world is possible. I'm talking about what makes it easier. Is when you have your first investors they want to see you have a customer. So you having market validation and understanding what your differentiators are early in the marketplace is key. And that's why, not to be pedantic, that's why I correct you and said I was a sales engineer. Sales engineers have a really good understanding of the product, of the marketplace, and why the product is relevant to that marketplace. Okay? And that's something that I think is something that's very valuable.
Differentiator, that's something that actually I'm going to take away among other things as I'm learning from this.
You gotta, the sales guys call it the elevator pitch. Fine, whatever you want to call it. I don't see that so much. I think the most important thing for a founder to be able to answer is why you exist.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. There's thousands of us, millions of us across the world with products and ideas. And it's like, why do they need you?
Yeah.
And then there's something that is really hard for engineers to understand. You have to, and the guys who are really good at this, there's Steve Jobs, I work for Cylance, Stu McClure and all that. What they're really good at is explaining to the world why their solution will be number one.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for a straight engineer because our brains are filled with why you won't, what will break, what I have to look at, or whatever. but it's really important for when you get to the founder stage to identify the marketplace where you could win and then boast. I mean, straight out boast, this is what we can do, and not to get too political, because it's not about politics. It's about personalities. It's why, and I have, in your country, I have many, many, many workers, and they're wonderful. I have to teach them how to boast, because it's not a normal way of speaking for many parts of the people around the world, to just look at something and say, I'm going to build this, and it's going to be the world's best in this category. It's something you have to do, though. You have to do for that. You have to be able to identify, and that's why it's so important to understand the marketplace. I mean, think about what you say. I'm going to build a software program, and it's going to be the best in the world. What the hell? That doesn't make any sense, right? We know that doesn't make any sense, but it's the same way we have to say, I'm going to build the best encryption software, and it's going to be the best encryption software for point-to-point mobile to web servers. See, that makes sense. That's it. And I can tell you why the other ones aren't as good, and I can tell you exactly why my solution will be the best. In the case of YouAttest, I look and say, we are the world's best in identifying users and attesting, coming up with the reports for use by consultants and MSPs. We're the world best because we have the workflow, and we were the only company that painstakingly made it into a multi-tenant RBAC solution. See, I can identify why I can win in that space, and that's what needs to be done.
Have you practiced saying this a lot, or did you just say it with the flow right
now? So, man, this is why the SE job was so good for my brain.
Yeah.
I practiced every time I got in front of someone, right? I practiced the demo. I practiced, am I practicing? Yeah, whatever you want to say. Maybe it's, just keep playing the game. But yes, by keep repeating and keep doing, my brain says, Garret, remember that time when that person said, I don't understand what that meant. Then you rephrased it. I used the rephrase. So it is imperative that for a startup that someone has done that.
Yeah.
And that someone does this, then great. Take that upon yourself and practice. Practice, with the people around you. But what you really want to do is set up as many meetings as possible. And then there's nothing more real than presenting to someone. Your brain's in overdrive. And I remember when I pitched SecureAuth, which you mentioned, that call was at 5 o'clock in the morning with people from reviewers for the first round of funding from US, from Japan, and from Saudi Arabia, and from Germany, because that was the only time that would work, right?
Right.
But I was wide awake because I gave the pitch, right? And I was really, really listening to what the responses were. And I'd done my practices so much with other people, and I encouraged them to give me questions that I was just ready. So that's what you have to be able to do. And their questions are, and I remember those to the day, were, but don't other solutions exist in this space? And then you should be able to say, great, of course you're right. And they're right. The questions that first start with telling the person they're right, because they are. You're absolutely right. But let me differentiate how our product will be different than others and why that's important to the marketplace.
Right. But that comes with experience, right? A lot of experience and a lot of...
Yeah, but you can get that experience. You can get that experience from being a sales engineer, from being in sales, from being an SDR, from, believe it or not, from being on the support desk. That was another really helpful position. Because in the support desk, what you're doing is you're explaining, if you're doing a good job, you're explaining not only how to do it, you're explaining why that's the right way to do it.
Right.
And understanding the product.
Right. You mentioned that the call of SecureAuth was at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was so the company sold for $200 million. Your call where the deal was done was an online meeting? I wasn't
No,
didn't
I was talking about that was the first call to get the first round of funding.
right. So
When the company was not, by anyone else's mind, not really a company, you know? It was just, maybe one or two customers and, me and a couple of engineers, you know?
yeah,
So there's, anytime you found a company, you gotta nail those first calls. When the company doesn't exist,
yeah.
in the big scheme, you never been to a trade show, no one's heard of you yet. How do you explain what you have and what you're going to build is going to win?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with that. Do I have your permission to talk about entrepreneurship for like 2 more minutes? I want to share my quick story before we go into
Sure. Yeah.
and this is a reason. I want to share my story because at the end of it, I want to ask you a question so that
Go
some
for it.
people can learn from it. So I was in corporate world for 12 years. I was doing job. I was really good at it. I was at very senior positions. I at one point had over $50,000 monthly investment into building systems. And I was making investments here and there, but I always wanted to start my own business. And the reason, even no matter how senior of a position I was at, how big of a team I had, the reason is because I didn't like I didn't like reporting to somebody anymore as an employee. Plus, I didn't really want to have an income cap on what I could achieve in my life. That was my motivation behind getting into entrepreneurship and starting my own business. And a lot of people have motivations, but they're unable to take that step. What was your motivation, sir, that actually made you feel like now I'm done with this and now I need to start my own startup and take all the risk that comes with it?
I think there was a round of layoffs in that one. I do. I mean, because, most people who start companies, and just to be honest, have start them while they're at another company. Now, whether people want to admit that or not, I don't care. I really don't. But it's true. Okay. They go, let me see what I can build. I'll pay this guy. Let's work together. Let's get a prototype going. We'll do my feelers out and all that kind of stuff, And then you have something and you think, well, yeah, look at this going. And then an event occurs. At least it did in my life, where, there was a round of layoffs because that company wasn't doing well. Okay, that's it. And then you make that binary choice. Okay, do I do this full time or do I, get a full-time job and try to keep doing this in the background? I'm a big believer, and people can say whatever they want. I'm a big believer in if you want to do the startup, I encourage you to start up while you're working with the others, because the first 3-6 months is you're not customer facing anyways. You don't have anything to show. You can't win, but you should be doing your validation, right? But you're gonna have to put your name on the brand. You're just gonna have to, because no one's gonna invest in you if it's a side project. That's maybe some people, but the majority of investors want to see someone take ownership. It goes back to what we were talking about: sales guys and married and with kids. This guy's got some stake. He's going nowhere. He's got to make this work, and that's what investors want to see.
Yeah, exactly. And how important is it to secure an investment to have a successful startup, or is it optional?
I think of course there are companies that can bootstrap, and that's wonderful. Well done, all that. Most companies need to overspend their initial income for marketing and for engineering.
Right.
So that's why getting faith in investors our field is built on investment money. Most of it is, it is what it is. I mean, it is. It is so important to get your idea out to customer base before others have it as well.
Yeah,
That's where the marketing and the messaging budget is so important.
it gives you speed, right?
Yes.
And that's very important in today's world where everybody is running after speed and competitors have it. And if we don't, then we're going to lose the race. Is that the concept?
Yes, because if you don't have the accelerators in the market space, others will catch up and do their own
Yeah.
engineering, and that's your functionality, and then you're behind.
All right, sounds good. So for people watching this who don't know what cybersecurity is, can you please share what does YouAttest actually solve and what does AI governance actually means for a business owner or a sales leader, and why should they care?
Straight out, what it does is enterprises who are in the healthcare, finance, insurance, government, defense, education, all of these fields are in regulatory market. What means, and this is where some people always get this wrong, doesn't mean their applications are regulated, doesn't mean their people are even regulated. No, it means that the data they are holding in the healthcare, finance, insurance, defense, education, retail, the data they are holding falls under regulation,
Right.
and then it goes out from there. If you're holding regulated, what's called sensitive data, PHI for healthcare, PII for finance and insurance, and CUI for defense, if you're holding any of those sensitive data, there's all these regulations and guidances on access to that data. One of them is you're supposed to be able to account and thus attest to who has access to that data. And you're supposed to be doing that through a process called a user access review. Now, those are very expensive when you hire third-party entities to do that, because they come in and they do the audit and they run it, and it's a very expensive process. So up to like $25 per user per app. What we did is figure out what the workflow of that and build a repeatable plug-and-play solution that plugs into people's enterprises and allows them to do the audits themselves. And the latest feature last year, consultants can use to plug and play into multiple companies and do the reviews and come up with the attestation report that is required not only for a secure environment, but for a compliant environment. That's what YouAttest is.